Well, the entire world is keeping a close eye on today's high-stakes midterm elections. Today's vote is being seen as a referendum on President Trump, especially his America First foreign policy.
Top issues include withdrawing from the Iran deal, holding peace talks with North Korea, moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, launching airstrikes against the Syrian regime following a chemical weapons attack, revising NAFTA, and tackling trade with China, and a whole lot more. So for more on this, let's bring in CBSN contributor Gabe Lipton. He writes for Signal. That's a newsletter produced by GZero Media. Good to see you.
Good to be with you guys.
So from a geopolitical perspective, how important are today's midterms when it comes to how other countries around the world perceive what's happening in this country?
So yeah, there's a lot of focus on the domestic consequences of the election, and rightly so. I mean, if the Democrats take back the House, there are some big choices they face right away. Who's the Speaker of the House? What's their strategy heading into 2020? But I think foreign capitals are also paying attention to what this means about the direction of the country. So for Beijing, for example, that's now waging a trade war against the U.S., does it change Trump's strategy if, for example, there's a big blue wave, or if Republicans alternatively hold Congress, hold the House? In Iran, there are questions about, the U.S. backed out of the Iran deal last May, and the Iranians are trying to make a decision about whether they try to hold on to the deal, and the Europeans, which Europeans have supported them in. So far, they're committed to doing so, and if they think that there's going to be a change in 2020, they may stay with that strategy. If Trump doesn't do too well today in the election, they may hold on to that. So, I think a lot of countries are watching very closely the results of this election.
What about China?
I mean, on trade, I think the big issue is trade, right? And China is very focused on, well, if the Democrats do take back the House, if Trump does look weaker politically, then how does that change his strategy in trade negotiations? And I think it's the same way for U.S. allies, for the Europeans, for Japan, for Canada. They've started to build all sorts of new economic structures, security alliances, after Trump was elected. And I think they're making the decision as they watch this election very closely. Do we double down on those strategies because we think Trump is out in 2020? Or are we hedging our bets until a different administration comes in, right? They're all making that calculation.
Do you think these other countries sort of have a particular leaning, or it doesn't matter how the chips fall, they'll just adjust their strategy based on it?
So China's a very, very interesting example. And if you followed the Chinese media over the last week, there hasn't been much discussion about the U.S. election, in part because they don't see the Democrats necessarily as a better option, right? And they also don't want to raise expectations about how this might change or improve trade negotiations. So the Chinese government, which has very strict control over the media, has sort of been tamping down discussions of this. I do think you could see some sort of a celebration if Trump doesn't do well. I mean, they are very angry with the Trump administration, but I think it's a subtle and interesting sort of depiction of how Beijing is viewing the election.